circumstances that they're put under. And they're totally alone as a unit. She can't really, it's only themselves who they can kind of vaguely trust. So that's a very exciting element, another one in the story.
I don't read the script, so they don't let me watch dailies.
Next question.
This question is for James. In the season 2 episode Downloaded, you got to sort of be what Six was to you. And I was just wondering what that was like, if you took any sort of cues from the way that she acted in her scene.
We had to, it's a good question, and we had to do it slightly differently, essentially because I am not Trisha.
No, you're not.
Thanks, Aaron. But Trisha could kind of like sidle around the side of a wall or furniture, and she'd like be there in the shot. And occasionally, when we were filming Downloaded in the rubble sequence near the cars with Lucy, we were like all on this kind of jutting out rubble and stones, and they were like, "Listen, can you just sit on these jagged stones on your bum and wait until the camera comes to you?" And I was like, "No, not really, no, because I'm desperately uncomfortable. I think that will then come through in my face." The rocks underneath, so I think that we need to do something slightly differently. But essentially, you're right. It's exactly. It's like a reversal, a twist around, and it was a lot of fun because. This was the Gaius Baltar, almost like from the miniseries, not kind of clothed and swathed in guilt and remorse. Somebody kind of purposeful with a dynamic and something that he wanted to help Caprica 6. That whole show was very, very intricate because the Cylons who were involved, Caprica 6 and Boomer, have to realize suddenly that Deanna doesn't want to help them. She actually wants to box them. And so there's kind of yeah, you did, baby. I was there. So that was a kind of cool thing. Does that answer the question?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my question is also for James. By far and away,
You can answer it for me, Erin.
The character I find most compelling on this show is Gaius, largely because of his moral ambiguity, and I think particularly in the first season and the first half of the second season, that's a really powerful arc. And in the second half of the second season, we see him more pigeonholed into the darker side of the good-evil dialectic. And I'm wondering if in season 3, we're going to see a return of that ambiguity at all.
The thing was, and a lot of people have asked me this about like Gaius' demise at the end of the second season. His lover, who he really loved, has like killed herself with a nuclear weapon that he not so cleverly gave to her, I can say, in a fit of pique. But it was like there was the booze, the alcohol, the kind of, as it were, degenerating. It was kind of like, we could have shown Baltar just sat there with a pen in his hands without any of that stuff. And then he would have just felt like, well, why is the planet in such a mess if this guy thinks... It's like losing it totally, in the sense of, the worst things, let them all happen. I've totally lost any particular interest. And what's fascinating with the Cylons coming on board and ruling Caprica is that Gaius Baltar, no matter about his position, is a human being, or thinks he's a human being at the moment. Thinks he's a human being, and therefore, in his heart, he's a member of the Resistance, even though he's kind of this totem for human loathing. Everybody else thinks that he might be. So there's, I think perhaps like it's a truism of human nature, there's some hope, always. Some hope somewhere.
Thank you.
James, what's the meaning of life?
Later, David, later in my room.
I just wanted to first commend you for having a really awesome show that has a really good multi-ethnic representation. But I want to ask Ron also, if you feel that with the representation of Geminon, if there leads into a bit of the media stereotype of the spiritual or the magical Negro, as some people have called it.
I think that's a fair question. I think that the honest answer is that's just sort of an unfortunate slip of casting that we sort of happened to slip a couple of African, I don't know if they're African American or African Canadian, but black performers into those roles, and then those roles tended to, as we were developing Geminon as a culture, we wanted Geminon as a colony to sort of represent more quote-unquote fundamentalist viewpoint, spiritual viewpoint. It wasn't really until later that we were kind of looking at film, and we sort of had the same sort of moment that you're describing in the editing bay, going, wow, what are we really saying about Geminon? It really wasn't something that we intended, and I think
she was the best actress for the role.
Yeah, and I think that's not really the message of what the show is trying to say, and it wasn't meant to say that everyone on Geminon is black and that they all have...
Or vice versa. I mean, when you guys see what Carl Lumley does to Eddie in episode 7, you'll know that African-American performers do all sorts of things on our show.
And we have an African-American Simon, right? Have they met Simon yet? Yeah, right, yes. Yeah. What? Was that shoot?
While she was in the hospital.
Okay, we have time for just a couple more questions. Hi, my question is sort of along the lines of the last one, but I wanted to first thank Edward James Olmos for the project you did last spring. The walkout movie that was on TV. My high school students really loved that, and I think it helped inspire them to get involved in the immigration process, and I just thought you should know that. And along those lines, I think it's interesting that Battlestar Galactica seems to be a show that doesn't have a lot of racism or racial issues among the humans, but then the big issue is between the Cylons and the humans. So could anybody comment on whether that was intentional or more that's going to come out?
It is intentional. I mean, it's one of the things as we were developing the culture in general. You know, what are the 12 colonies and what are they about? There were a couple of things that I wanted to play metaphorically and not directly. You know, one was gender roles. You know, we have women pilots, women president, and we treat the sexes very equally in the universe. And there's no even comment that it's unusual for the woman to be president or the fighter pilot. It's just not even an issue.
Some of you may know Starbuck is a woman in our
yes. And the same thing with the races. It was just an early decision. Okay, let's not play that aspect of it, but let's deal with racism in the show in terms of the Cylons, as in terms of the other, as in terms of, you know, the humans view themselves as the only true people, the only true people that have souls, and that the Cylons are that other thing, that other being that we will never, ever acknowledge are as good as us. And we just wanted to play it in that key rather than play it, you know, more about skin color or human races.
Thank you. Aaron, I love you too.
Yes, I just wanted to say how much my wife hates the show because of some psycho writing a scene with number 6 breaking a baby's neck.
Oh, that would be me.
I cannot get her to watch the show now. The question would be concerning how are you keeping it, the way in which you're keeping in contact with the fans. I know that you're posting on Sci-Fi, you're posting the video blogs, but also everyone on the table. How are you keeping contact with these people in the room and the people that aren't in the room that are waiting in line back there?
You know, it's an interesting question. How do you maintain contact with the audience in television? I mean, the internet has been a boon in that. You know, back in the old days when I did Star Trek, you know, at the beginning, all you had was mail. And unlike playwrights or people that write feature films, I don't have the ability to go into the back of the theater and watch an audience react to what I do. So the internet is really the best conduit for that. I mean, what we do is, you know, various people, some on this panel, read the internet chat rooms, or not chat rooms, the internet bulletin boards. We see comments on other sites. Sci-Fi.com has a wonderful habit of sending us lots of press clippings for what critics are saying, what's being said in various places. And you try to listen. You try to sort of get a sense of, keep your finger on the pulse of what the audience is thinking. Ultimately, you try to just make the best show you can. You can't really do it by committee. You can't really do it because you think that the 40% of the fan base thinks X and 60%